I didn't really have any fear about the future for my kids, even having been in the military, because I don't think it's such a scary place. I don't think that the world is, I mean, don't get me wrong, the world is tough and it has blindsided me time and time again, but it's because of people, not necessarily the world. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. I think there's a lot of fear mongering. Um, and I think people are afraid of things that they don't understand. And I knew myself well enough to know that if I instill that in them, they're not going to be fearful. They're going to be confident. They're going to be driven. And they know that they have a mom that loves the shit out of them.
Mandy,
Yes,
welcome.
sir.
Who are you? Where are you? And what do you do?
Who I am is I am a mom of three. I'm a wife. I'm in the fitness industry. I have a background of military veteran and first responder. I live in Green Cove Springs, Florida. And what was the other question?
Well, it was who are you, where are you, and what do you do? And I think you pretty much,
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
yeah, well, except you didn't say who you are, which, that can be useful.
Oh, Mandi Bresnahan is my official name.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll use your official name until we're advised otherwise. If you have like an alias you'd prefer to use, you can send that to me. We'll edit all this down. So we'll just use your street name if you want.
I
Um,
love it.
A lot of what I've seen from you on Instagram is your first responder type of stuff. I think that's a lot of what your personal brand shows. How long have you been in? So I'm assuming you're a firefighter, EMS. Is that accurate?
I was. I actually got out of the fire department in February of last year, but
Okay.
I was a firefighter EMT for 5 years.
What was your military background?
I was in the army. I was an interrogator and a Russian linguist.
No kidding. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting. So what led you to learn to speak Russian?
Well, I didn't have the choice. So I graduated high school. I took one college course, which was astronomy, because really it was the only one that sounded interesting and the only one I could afford. I could afford one class because I was paying for it by myself. And I didn't like it. I had no drive, no ambition. And I mean, I worked at like a Presto factory making fry daddies, and I worked at a gas station. And I thought, like, if I can get out of this town and find something else out there, I need the swift kick in the ass. So I told my dad, who was in the Air Force and retired out of the Air Force, hey, I want to go in the military. So I went and flipped through a book and said, I found the one that said human intelligence collector. And I was like, that sounds badass. I want to do that. And the recruiter at the time said, well, you have to take an additional test to do that. And we haven't had anybody pass it yet. So you may want to pick something else. And I don't know if it was being stubborn or self confidence, was like, this is my one choice and I'll take the test. And then if we need a plan B, I'll do it then. And I was the first to pass.
Please accept my belated congratulations on passing the test.
Thanks.
Well, I know you probably either can or don't want to get into too much detail of that, but what was the purpose of that test? What were they trying to find out about you that clearly you had and the other people didn't?
Well, I can speak about this test because you could Google it if you wanted to. It was called a D Lab, which is like a language aptitude test, because part of my job requirement is I would have to learn a language. And it was a language that the military made up, I believe in the 40s or the 60s, one or the other. And it showed commonalities of how apt you are to learn a language. So none of it made sense. I thought I failed it. It was just, comparing things, and um it's really hard to describe because none of it made sense.
Sure.
But I ended up passing that, and then based on my score on that, the army put me in a specific language, which happened to be Russian, and I loved because I grew up on Rocky Four. I I was in love with Ivan Drago. I always thought Russian was super cool, and the fact that it was the one that they gave me was icing on the cake.
Well, it's good that you didn't tell me you were in love with Drago because they definitely would have kicked you out immediately. I mean,
Yeah,
that's not what they're looking for.
I know, I know. I'm all American, but damn it, that blonde hair and beefy chest.
You take this test, they say, okay, you're going to be a Russian language specialist
Mhm.
and you're in interrogation. So are you like talking to military spies? Like, is that what your job was?
The rules of being an interrogator for the military is we're dealing with non-Americans. So anybody overseas that has intel that we need to collect to hand out to other people, that's who we're interrogating. So not necessarily spies, we're talking legitimate bad guys. But we can't deal with Americans as far as the military is concerned. That's, FBI, CIA.
Sure, intelligence agencies. So you
Mm-hmm.
were basically there'd be a captured combatant of some sort, and your group of people would go in and try to figure out what you could from them for more strategical purposes.
Correct.
All right.
Connecting the dots.
Gotcha. Okay, well, this is very informative. There's a lot more depth there than I realized. So that's a little bit that is pretty badass. You got my respect for following that line. And you may have said this already, but how long did you stay in the military?
Less than 4 years. I found out I was pregnant while I was in Afghanistan interrogating people.
Okay. And if Afghanistan roundabout, what year would that have been?
It was '06. And let me be clear, I didn't get pregnant in Afghanistan. I had only been there for about 2 weeks
Okay.
and found out there. So that was
Okay.
'06.
Okay. Well, fair enough. That's a rich set of life experiences that have brought you to where you are now. And you said that you're a fitness professional. So where are we post first responder?
Right now, I am in a manager role at a local gym here. It was actually the gym that I was a personal trainer for 6 years prior to the fire service. And, some life circumstances happened, a little bit of bullshit as well. And I went to this gym with my husband to go get a gym membership again. And one of the ladies that I used to work with several years ago said, "Hey, are you looking for a job? Because we're hiring." I went and submitted a resume that day and started working there less than a month later.
So I remember seeing it various times on your account. I guess you were probably doing like PT for your firefighter stuff where you guys are like picking up heavy bags that I'm assuming you're supposed to simulate a limp human body and going out and I don't remember everything right now, but I know you were doing like military presses in what looked like the front yard of a fire station. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was that a really critical part of your job, being able to maintain physical fitness?
Oh, completely. I mean, the guys that I worked with outweighed me by at least 50 to, 100 plus pounds. I'm only 130 pounds. And the good part about my fire career is that the people that I was stationed with, as far as the leadership, looked to me for the physical fitness portion. I looked to them to help me be a better firefighter or a firefighter at all. So because of my background and the fact that, prior to my fire service, I would post shit on Instagram because a lot of people want to be fit. They just don't know what they can do. Or if they have a garage gym, they don't know the types of things that they can do to really be fit. So I can honestly say, at least 2.5 years of my fire service, I had the best lieutenant that taught me to be an awesome firefighter, and I put him in the best shape of his entire life. It was he and I always.
A lot of people go from active duty military into first responder roles, is was that the correlation for you? Like you'd already developed all the discipline and stuff like that, so you just did it, or was there something else that connected you?
There was something else. When I got out, like I said, I was pregnant with my first daughter. And then I ended up having my second daughter 2 years later, and I was a stay-at-home mom for 12 years.
Wow.
In between there, I went to a personal training institute where I actually went there for 3 months and learned how to do everything. And I lost my sense of self. You know, you go from a badass job. I went to airborne school, so I got to jump out of airplanes. And I really, for once in my life in the military, felt like I was somebody, you know, not just a no name from, you know, the town that I grew up in. And I love that town, but to me, I wasn't making anything of myself. So to go into the military and then take care of my children and lose that, I was looking for something that was kind of like that. My ex-husband at the time was already in the fire service, and I went to an award ceremony with him, and I knew a lot of the women that he worked with. I knew a lot of the guys that he worked with as well. And there was an award ceremony, and not a single chick got an award for anything. And it pissed me off so bad. I ended up telling his mom either that night or the next day, I want to join the fire service. I think I can do it. And that started the ball rolling.
When you were young, you know, late teenager, young adult, just sort of like having that awareness of, oh, I'm a human being in the world too, and perhaps should be participating in it in some way. I don't remember the exact sort of semi-derogatory term that you used to describe yourself at that age, so I don't want to make one up, but you described yourself in not a positive light at that particular point in your life. And that's, you know, your next step from there was to join the military so you get out of your small town. When you described yourself in that way at that age just now, is that something you realized looking back, like you weren't really concerned with living your life to the fullest or that sort of thing, or did you have an awareness of that whenever you were at that age?
I would say through my teenage years, I was very busy playing sports throughout high school. And I never really was encouraged to look past that next step. My dad was deployed a lot. I had a phenomenal mother. My mom and my dad was deployed, was a great mother. But it never occurred to me that one day high school was going to end, sports were going to end. I wasn't in a big enough school to where scholarships were an option. And I mean, I remember the day of graduation, I was like, oh shit, like I should have been thinking about this way before that. So there was nothing there. I just thought, okay, well, this is all I got. I'll get a job here. Maybe I'll try school. Um, I just didn't know. I didn't have anybody telling me of the potential that I had, that I could have done something. It just took, you know, me hating where I was, not because of the town or whatever. It's just like I needed something. I needed that why and the drive.
Yeah, I think there's a certain personality type that feels that they have potential. They feel that they have strength. They have something inside of them that they can be using, but they haven't identified it yet at a young age. They just have a feeling. That call is in it's in everybody. Some of us feel it a little bit more strongly than others, and it can be very uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of young people to feel that and have it inside of them and not know what it is and not know what to do with it. And so, to a lot of people who may listen to that, and particularly younger people, they can waste a lot of time on social media. You can spend a
Mm-hmm.
lot of your time putting things into that very superficial image of yourself on the internet. But what you got to stop and think is like, what are you getting back out of it? And the answer is absolutely nothing. What are you getting out of hours spent on video games? As painful and touchy as that subject is with a lot of people, you're getting nothing back out of it. So if you're younger, you need to stop and listen and see if you've got that call inside of you, because I can tell you if you ignore it, you're really going to regret it as time passes. Is that something that since you went through a similar experience, is that something you talk about with your daughters?
Yes, absolutely. I know the funny thing is, you know, going back to me being brought up in a teenager and it was never really talked about, there is an immense pressure of kids in high school to know what they want to do the second they're a freshman. I mean, it's insane pressure here, especially where we live, because it's a richer community. And so, my daughter, my 17-year-old, almost feels like she's behind because she doesn't know what she wants to be when she grows up. And so she's insanely smart. She rarely has to do homework, which was not me. Like I was in the books all the time just to barely maintain like a 3.5. Um, but she knows she wants to go into the medical field. So even a few weeks ago, we were talking about the military. And she said that's something that she would like to do because, kind of like me, she doesn't really want to go to school. The college atmosphere isn't her thing. She's more of like an introvert. And, we stay at home and we watch Jeopardy at the end of the night. Um, so it was the first time I actually felt like I would be okay with her going into the military like I did. But I told her, if you do, it has to be the Air Force. And I really want to encourage you to do something that you can use if you decide to get out, because I chose something that was cool. It gave me one opportunity when I got out. I got to do a contract in Russia back in 2014. That was pretty cool. But other than that, besides, being a really good listener and being able to, you know, interrogate people, I guess, and listen to people that speak Russian, it did absolutely nothing for me. So had I had somebody advising me better, I would have been more prepared when I got out. So that's where we are with that. She wants to do something in the medical field, and I we're going to cross that bridge, probably in a few months before she starts her senior year.
There must be a certain sense of relief that comes from having a teenage daughter that wants to watch Jeopardy with you at the end of the night, though.
We have some incredible kids. Like the fact that we eat dinner together every single night, we watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, and we talk about stuff. Like we are not afraid of talking about anything. And I'm extremely grateful. And that kind of gives me a sense of pride in knowing that I may not have done everything right, but at least I'm getting it right now.
Well, you said you were with your kids for 12 years of your life, and that was your job, being a mom for 12 years. Whenever you found out you were pregnant for the first time, was that something that was present on your mind early? Like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go be like the best mom I can possibly be, and were you looking that far into the future, or is it something that you had to learn through trials?
I had to learn through trials. I when I joined the army, I was planning on retiring out. I really wanted to give something my full effort for the first time in my entire life, instead of just relying on sports that I was naturally good at and didn't really have to put much effort into. I really wanted to build a career and be proud of myself at the end of it. So when I found out I was pregnant, was in Afghanistan, and I was devastated. I knew that they were going to have to send me home because it was in March, right at the height of malaria season. I had to take the medicine, and had I continued taking it, it would have killed her. So I went to my command, super awkward, and when I deployed, a I went with people that weren't my usual unit. It was Joint Special Operations, so these were the people that were kind of their own entity when they go over there, kind of like, the lone wolves. And so I went with two other women from my unit, but other than that, we didn't know anybody. So my commander, I just met, and I'm like, hey, I know I just got here, but I'm pregnant. But I was determined to stay. And I asked them, hey, can I just like, continue to do my OB appointments here. And then, you can send me to Germany if I need to do actual checkups. And he's like, we can't do that because you have to take your meds. So 2 weeks later, I was sent home. And less than a month after that, I pretty much said, I'm done. I want to get out because it just, I mean, it seriously was like, I was focused on my career and this is where I wanted to go. And I was so heavily focused on that. Kids at that moment they weren't on my radar. But then when it was like, okay, now I'm responsible for a human, I just wanted to get the hell out and take care of my daughter. I wanted to do it right. So I ended up getting out the very next month. And then I used my GI Bill to go to college. So I was taking online college classes while I was pregnant and going to classes as well. But yeah, I wasn't prepared for it. But the fact that it happened, I was going to put everything into it.
Well, you sound like the sort of person who decides to put everything into something the moment she finds out she's doing it. When you enter into motherhood, what are some of the fears that you have or that you think that everybody might have?
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking about the future? Surely, having come out of the military, you've got to have some concerns. There are things that are got to be passing through your head that are worrying you at that point.
Really, the main thing that I was thinking about is I didn't want somebody else raising my kids, so I was going to immediately stop living my life for me and I was going to live it for her. So whatever I was choosing to do in the future, 24 hours a day, she was going to be under my care. So no daycare, no passing her off. And then, same thing with my second daughter. I didn't really have any fear about the future for my kids, even having been in the military, because I don't think it's such a scary place. I don't think that the world is, I mean, don't get me wrong, the world is tough and it has blindsided me time and time again, but it's because of people, not necessarily the world. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. I think there's a lot of fear mongering. And I think people are afraid of things that they don't understand. And I knew myself well enough to know that if I instill that in them, they're not going to be fearful. They're going to be confident. They're going to be driven. And they know that they have a mom that loves the shit out of them.
That's an interesting perspective that you have that it's people in the world that we should be concerned about, not the world itself. And so your remedy for that was making good people in the world.
That's
That's how
it.
you balance it out. That's a really that's a really profound message because in our society in the past several years, I think there's been a bit of a weight on people in general. And I've talked to friends and acquaintances who have said young strong people who have said, yeah, I don't want to start a family. I don't want to bring kids into this world. And um, Brian, who's GFDA's founder and creative director, who's not with us today, I remember he would always say like, no, that's the wrong attitude. You're a decent person. You need to have kids. You need to start a family because that's the only way we're going to make the world better is to create strong people who will contribute to their society in meaningful ways and lasting ways. And that's a responsibility that you have if you're a person who's got that mentality.
I agree. And the problem is, if you don't already have kids, it's really hard to understand how easy it is to pass those values and that message to your children. So it's not like you're raising them up in a cave, or exposing them to horrible things. It's if you give them what they need at home and truly listen to them as if they are people, not just somebody that tell to go to bed and to brush their teeth, that it's just it's easier than people think. It takes a lot. I mean, it is exhausting, and you're just, praying to God that, they're listening to some of the things that you say and that you're being a good example and not a hypocrite. But I think it would be a waste for people to let that fear not give them, you know, children, and a possibility that you raise them up good, you do the best you can, and just let them know, hey, if you ever need somebody to come back to, I'm right here.
So as you're going through this process of accepting this responsibility as a parent and making these kinds of decisions, what were some of the values that you knew you wanted to instill in your kids?
The biggest one was be yourself, no matter what anybody thinks. I was the girl with short hair, probably shorter than yours. I mean, I had a buzz cut my junior and senior year of high school. I colored it all kinds of colors. Um, I wore skater clothes. Sometimes I wore a dog collar just because I don't know. I liked being different. I wanted to be just like my brother, who was 13 months older than me, and he dressed kind of gothic. And I was like, that's freaking cool. I love my brother. Like, why not? Um, that being said, it has built me into giving less of a fuck about what people think, because as much as I want to express to themselves, be yourselves, I know how harsh people can be. But I don't ever want them to lose their sense of self. I have allowed other people, even my adult life, even as early as, last year, the year before that, I have let people convince me that I am the way they think I am instead of knowing who I really am. And I don't ever want my daughters to have to deal with that. So that's the one thing. Be yourself and let the trash take itself out.
Nice. There's definitely a two-way street to the advice of be yourself, particularly when you're very young because you don't know what yourself is. And
Yeah.
so God, I mean, I'm super old, but looking back at like t being a teenager, it's just you look back on it and you're like, how is it even humanly possible for somebody to be a teenager and come out of that in one piece? Because it's
Yeah.
so frightening. It was really a torturous time for me in a lot of ways. And so I look back at teenagers and just think like, I know you're a tempest of emotions and uncertainties. And nowadays, like there's so many conflicting messages coming to people, and there's so much from the external world that's saying you must be like this or you're a bad person.
Hmm.
Those messages may conflict with the values and the traditional perspectives that your family and your lineage, your religion, all those sorts of things may be telling you. And here's the thing, you got to decide. I mean, you got to navigate it. You got to go through it, and it's okay if you do the wrong thing. It's okay if you make the wrong decision. It's okay if in being yourself you kind of slip up a little tiny bit and you end up being somebody else because you can't suss it out. Because you're going to have to burn through that a little bit to find out who you really are. Maybe go through
Hmm.
some difficult situations before you find out who you really are. I know that's got to be frightening for a parent, is knowing that those knowing those trials are awaiting your kids out there.
Yeah, that's the biggest one for me because I feel like I've gone through a ton of those. Um, but at the end of the day, and it sounds, you know, it's always weird to say because it's difficult to speak this out loud and not feel hurt by it. But I feel like I have had very difficult life instances, but it has built me. I just wish I wasn't so emotional. If I wasn't so sensitive, um, and take things so personally, which is, something that I've had since I was a teeny little thing. I feel everybody's emotions and I want everybody to be happy and not hurt. It would be easier. Looking at my daughters, I know they are both very much like me and they are very sensitive people. but they're also extremely witty and tough and can fire back when we're, just talking shit here at the house. So that's good. But I think the hardest part for me is having to step aside when they do get older as a mother and give advice instead of saying, this is what you need to do because I had to do that. But damn it, that's going to be really rough for me because I definitely would shank somebody for my kids. But it's just part of the growing process. So I'm hoping through everything that they've seen, I've hidden nothing from them. My entire life story, the good and the bad, they know every bit of it because I want to empower them to be able to know that making the right decision for them doesn't necessarily mean making the right decision for anybody that's around them. And I have to give them permission to do that.
You can't choose anybody else's life for them. You can't go make their mistakes for them. And as a parent, I'm sure there's an urge to to go step out in front of your kids and clear the path for them at every step to help them not have heartaches, to help them not have desperate moments where they feel lost, they feel like they don't know what to do and there's dire consequences, or maybe they're in situations where there's no good answer and no matter what they do, they're going to suffer in some way. And at the end of the day though, that's the human condition, and we have to have those experiences. Everybody's going to face that. And I think probably as a parent or as a teacher or even a leader in a lot of ways, people who want to make life easy for any other people, they're going to end up making it harder because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to create that terrible situation in some way that you can't foresee, that you can't control. It's going to come. Life is going to deliver that to everybody. And if you prevent someone out from going out and finding it themselves, you're going to probably end up creating it in their life.
Yeah, I agree. As you were talking, to me, I think it would be doing a disservice to my daughters because it wouldn't teach them to trust themselves. They would have to trust me that mom's going to handle everything. And really, what people need to learn to do is to trust themselves, their instinct, their decisions, and ride with it, good or bad. So I want them to know now, like, it's okay to make decisions. It's okay to have an opinion on things. Just don't hurt people. That's it. Plain and simple. Be a good person, trust yourself, don't hurt people.
In the menagerie of mistakes that we're going to make in life is when you choose to be yourself, when you choose to do your own thing, you have to have an awareness that you're going to come into conflict with other people. The second you make that decision, you are going to come into conflict with other people. And some of those people are what you were describing earlier, where there are people who see you in a certain way, expect you to be a certain way, or are consciously going to try and make you a certain way. Everybody who makes the decision to be true to themselves and listen to their internal voice, I think they encounter those people. I think we form emotional bonds with people. Even a really super strong, driven person can fall in love with somebody who's really bad for them, or maybe it's a family
Mm-hmm.
member you didn't choose to have in your life, or maybe it's a friend that you know, who's a super awesome person, but now you're attached to them and they've gone the wrong way and you've got to sort that out. Or maybe it's somebody with power in your life. Maybe it's a employer or a supervisor or someone who could make or break your career. And the world's filled with it. The span of your life is going to be filled with those moments where there's that voice of that other person and there's that voice inside of you, and you've it's so hard to know which one to listen to. And you're going to listen to the wrong one sometimes, but it's such a hard thing to do. I I I hope that well, I know that you've worked hard to be that voice to plant that voice, I should say, in your daughter's minds, because that's one of the responsibilities of a parent is to sort of plant that seed of that voice in their head that's always going to speak to them the rest of their lives.
Yeah, everything that I teach them was a lesson of mine that I learned too late in life. And I have no shame in using specific examples for them, how I fucked up in my careers or how I fucked up in relationships, whether it be my fault or allowing somebody to treat me a certain way. We'll sit down and have those heart to heart talks. And I just, I find it very therapeutic to get the view of my daughters, especially my 17-year-old, because I've always called her an old soul. Like she's wise beyond her years. She probably was like a medicine woman, like in a previous life. I don't know. But it's so refreshing for her to give me advice. It's like, okay, now I know, like, I did okay here because she's very thoughtful and she's intuitive and she's actually thinking of the world around her and how it affects people and how it affects me enough to actually come up with very um, constructive advice and like applicable advice, like shit you can actually do instead of, oh, just go be happy or don't worry about that, mama. It's just like she'll tell me how, and it's really freaking cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like some people are born, it's like some people are born with a really strong natural wisdom, and some people are born with a really strong natural curiosity. Like some people kind of already know everything in the world and they don't need to go out and do crazy stuff, and they can get a sense of it just by sort of seeing other people do it and reflect deeply on it. And some people have to go out there and do the crazy things and suffer all the consequences in the world and build that knowledge for themselves. Yeah. So like
That was me.
yeah, maybe you like pass some of that hereditary like weird psychic life experience into your daughter so that she was able to benefit from that.
I think so. Yeah, but I was on the opposite end of the spectrum, the one you said in the last that had to have the crazy like, dirt in the face kind of experiences to learn. I'm lucky that she's able to do it in a different way, more by example of what not to do and, you know, a majority of what to do.
So, well, you talked about several things about how important you felt it was to be transparent with your kids about your mistakes. How about things like that moment where you're at the award ceremony and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go get these awards as a woman." And when you the like whatever is in you that's clearly a natural inclination that sparks that and wakes it up and drives you to go do it. Do you ever talk to them about how to make those kinds of decisions?
Um, Really, it's not so much as a, for me in that award ceremony, it wasn't about like I want to go get the awards. It was like, well, not one single woman got an award. Well, I just want to go try and see, see if I'm capable of it. So for me, I just encourage them to try everything, whether or not they feel like it is specifically meant for a female or a male. I not purposely put myself in a lot of careers that were male dominated. It's just my personality. I grew up with a brother. We beat the shit out of each other growing up, and I just always had a sense of adventure and pushing myself. And I knew for damn sure going into the fire service, especially in July in Florida, which was a really awful decision, just to not be afraid to to make yourself smaller to make people feel more comfortable. I did that a lot in my career. Especially in the fire service, more than anything, because I joined the fire department at 34, so I had all of that life experience behind me. Where a lot of them joined at 17, 18 years old, they don't know how to wipe their ass, so they not only need people to teach them to be a firefighter, they need to teach them how to be just like a productive adult. Okay, this is how we turn a fan on. This is how we, turn a generator on. This is how we open up a nozzle. I didn't so much need that as opposed to how to do everything the fire service needed me to do to keep us safe and to save things. Right. So it very much, um, I think I'll just give you an example. Before I went in the fire service, I was already in the fitness world. I'd been a personal trainer forever. I was constantly posting on Instagram workouts. I'm a hardcore veteran, even though I don't talk about it a lot because I'm very tired of the thank me for my service thing, but I'm very proud of it. When I got into the fire department in fire school, everybody knew that I was in fire school. They knew my husband previously. They knew that there was this hot chick going through fire school, and not my words, this is what I hear, this hot chick going through fire school, and now she's coming to our county. That's all I heard. Looks, looks, looks. Not to mention the fact that I was, the only chick that went through fire school. We started with 18 people, we graduated 6, and I happened to be one of those. So I know how to suffer. I know how to, grin and bear it and get through shit. Not anything to do with my looks. I get to the fire service. I don't have to be babied. I go through the year of probation, not as rough as some others, but because I'm a grown ass woman with 2 kids, I'm married, I don't have time for bullshit. Teach me how to be a firefighter. So I was told that, my probationary year was easy because I wasn't picked on as much. And then when I started posting workouts that I was doing to encourage not just people within my department, like, hey, if you don't know what you're doing, this is what I'm doing. This is what I do on a typical day. Or people that want to get in the fire service. And I was stressing the importance of how important it is to work out while you're on shift, to condition yourself to, having to be ready at all times. I no shit was given 2 nicknames that got back to me. One was Look at Me Mandy, and the other one was TikTok Girl. I don't have TikTok, never owned TikTok, so that is in and of itself silly, but it was just this. I was listening to people tell me that I am full of myself, that I really need attention, when deep down in my heart, I knew that's not who I am. I had so many people, women, men especially, that would DM me, thank you for showing me what to do while I'm working out, or thank you for showing me that you can be older and go for your dreams and be successful. I didn't think I was an amazing firefighter. I thought I was average. I could do the job. I'd show up on time. I was working out like a maniac, and I listened. But because of this hot chick coming in and now all of a sudden is keeping up with you and maybe um, tugging at your ego a little bit, all of a sudden I was becoming this self-centered chick on social media. So that to me was the worst thing that I could have done, was believed them when I was they were getting the wrong impression of me, and I was letting myself turn into that person.
So when you're in those moments, like how do you mitigate that? Because these are people you got to work with, I'm assuming, or you got to deal with them in your life in some way. If we exclude like the natural social media hecklers that are going to come to everybody's life, these are
Yeah.
people probably that you got to maintain some sort of decorum with as a professional or just as a person in the world. Like, how do you do that in your head? How do you how do you find that place inside of yourself?
Well, it's pretty easy because none of them had the balls to say it to my face. So I didn't have to deal with that. But it would drive me to just continue to do what I'm doing, because if I'm doing that something people are convicted by, whether through, a fragile ego, or, and I'm just assuming here because I've never had a conversation with these people, like, fragile ego, or they're just really unhappy, or mostly they don't understand who I am as a person. I'm okay with that because I'm in control of that. I control what I post. And mostly it was about physical fitness and mental health, which is huge to me, more so than fitness is mental health. That if people are getting it, I'm okay with the people that don't get it. But it would frustrate me that the gossip would just continue to go around. It's, I'm not just a pretty face. I came here to work, and I came here to make this a career. but eventually it gets to a point where it makes you feel so out of place and so uncomfortable that I had to leave that environment. But I didn't lose who I was in the process. I was starting to, and that's why I had to jump ship, is because I was believing what these people were, you know, saying about me, and just creating a not mentally safe environment for me to be in.
It is people in the world who settle for less than their best are always going to be threatened by people who are striving to do their best. It takes a tremendous amount of dedicated effort over long periods of time, and it's totally exhausting to stick with something where everybody you're surrounded by sees that inside of you and they feel insecure about it. Like when you've got that many of that type of person around you, I mean, it can be life consuming. I actually walked away from situations, again, different rationale and different situation going on, but I walked away from a situation where almost everybody was part of an established order and wasn't trying as hard as they could and was just phoning it in every single day. I was super passionate about it. I was super dedicated. And I got to a point that was like, I'm not doing this for 20 years. I'm not going to get down in the trenches and fight and fight and fight with these people because I knew in my heart that you do that long enough, you're going to become them because you're going to have to resort to their methods in order to beat them. And if you do it long enough, you will lose yourself and you will become the thing that you're fighting against.
Yep, I agree. And I want to clarify that the people that were doing that, I hardly ever worked with. It wasn't my crew. My crew, we were really tight. We did everything together. We joked, laughed, we talked shit. But when we talked shit about people, we didn't talk about their personal lives. We talked about what they were doing as a coworker and what we would do better, and how we would train better to not be like that person. So when you make things personal, especially when you're around people for 24 hours every third day, to me that was such an injustice and such a coward way of trying to make you feel better by bringing somebody else's personal life down, because it's hard being away from your family for 24 hours, being around people sometimes that you don't like. But when I was with my crew, I had two really good crews my last few years in the service, and they were both specialty trucks. So one was a tower, so I'm on a 110-foot ladder. I'm the backseat firefighter, so I'm the one on top, cutting through roofs. And the other one was a squad, and it's more of a heavy rescue where we go and cut up cars, and we're going inside the fire instead of going up on the roof. I had two phenomenal crews that I never felt like, honestly, looked at me as a woman. They had the same expectation of me as they did everybody else. And yeah, of course, I'm a woman. They're going to probably not say as much filthy stuff as they want because I'm there, but I would cut up with them. So the good thing about having those two crews and then having gone what I went through with everybody else, that some I'd never even worked with before, but you hear through the grapevine and you adapt that thought process on somebody, which I think is stupid anyway. Like, why not go see who that person is yourself? Is that I was able to step away from this fire service because I realized that in trying to push myself to do these things that were so tough, the military, the fire service, is I just wanted an attaboy. And I found myself searching for it, not like oh, look at me, look at me. It was just like, you know what? You're all right. I was doing that in my personal life. I was doing that in my professional life, that I just wanted to be relevant. No, I'm not a 6 foot, 200-pound dude. No, you probably don't look forward to, me showing up on shift and being like, oh, I'm so glad Mandy's here. We're not going to have to worry about anything. I wanted so badly to be like those guys that, everybody was like, oh, thank God this person's here. My husband, I worked with him for years, a phenomenal medic, and even a more phenomenal fireman. Like he worked on the squad with a heavy rescue. He's also 200 pounds and built like a brick shit house, but also a very intelligent medic. And we went on some gnarly calls together, and everybody was grateful when he was around. I had to allow myself to stop searching for that. Wasn't my place, wasn't my people. What I needed to do was to find a job where it took all of that search for ego away and focus on my family. And it has paid off in dividends. No, I'm not the badass that I was. I don't get that ego or that, that atta girl, atta boy by feeling like I've done something cool. But to see and have conversations with my kids and my husband and do a good job at the work that I'm doing now has been more fulfilling than any gnarly fire call I could have ever gone to. And I know that sounds really, it probably sounds like bullshit, but I turn 41 next month. This is the me that I have been searching for. I just thought I had to do something grandstand to get it. And all I really needed to be doing was, for one, trust my own instincts and make good humans.
Well, I don't think it sounds like bullshit at all. It sounds like maturity to me. And it's, what you're describing is external validation. Everybody
Yep.
in the world requires external validation to be an emotional being and to function in society. In fact, I think that one of the reasons that we see a lot of really, really miserable people on the internet is because they have exchanged external validation for gratification. And it's not the same thing. It's not deep enough. It's not meaningful that people, total strangers who are very far away from you, do something really, really easy, which is move their finger and tap a heart. There's meaning behind how easy it is for them to do that. And so it's not going to be rewarding to you. It's not going to be meaningful to you. And similarly, when we're in anybody who's had a job that's very stressful, that other people rely on them, you're dumping a lot of your emotional energy out into that experience that you're having, even if it's a purely physical thing that you're doing, and it seems like it's not engaging your emotions at all, like the stress that you have to go through. That's you've got all kind of chemicals pumping through your brain to go through that, to function, to have that cerebral presence to do things the right way. So the external validation from comrades and from people who have been through that experience with you, I think it is something that we need a lot. And if you're not getting that, then it isn't healthy. It isn't right. Something's wrong with the situation if you're not getting it. And that maybe that does bubble up as a craving for it. Maybe that does drive us in the wrong direction sometimes as far as our egos go. But at the end of the day, there's another place to get external validation, even if it's not high fives. It is looking at work well done. That is a form of external validation that you can only gain with time and experience and with maturity, because it's maturity that allows you to see the value in it. And if you can go at the end of your day and say, nobody gave me a high five, but I've made my life better. I've made the world better. At the end of the day, I love my life because of what I've done. That's more external validation than a lot of people are going to accomplish in their life, in my humble opinion.
I would absolutely have to agree. And, social media, I think it was easier for me to get validation internally before the social media craze, right? Because you were doing meaningful things. I go back to the word meaningful just because that was on your website and I really love it. But I had a very meaningful relationship with my brother, and we were outside, and our relationship was super strong because we weren't not looking at each other. We weren't on our phones. We didn't have, like, we had a phone with a 10 foot, the rolly thing, what is it? The phone cord.
Mhm.
if we wanted to make a phone call. But when you go on social media, you see these people doing some crazy shit. You're saying, okay, well, because I'm not doing that, I'm not doing something that's worthy of any sort of validation or whatever. So that's where people start to get insecure. And I think that I'm just going to talk about you guys for a second. I think that's why I don't even remember when I started following you guys. It was a long time ago. For one, I love that you use the word fuck because it's such a refreshing like, oh, okay, they're not that serious and they got a little flair to them, is because it's just something that can convict me personally and remind me that it's not that serious. Just go back to the basics. Be yourself, don't hurt people, do a good job, remember who you are. That's really the basics, right? And because of social media, it's really hard not to get wrapped up in that. You could probably tell from my social media, I don't post that much, motivational things anymore, because what I was doing previously is it was almost fake motivation. It's I wanted to post stuff to motivate other people because I was probably lacking in that area. That's really what mine was about, is if I was hurting and I, posted, a saying or whatever, I can 99% guarantee you I was feeling that right then. I just wanted to put it out there to say, okay, I hope none of you are going through this, without saying I was going through it at the same time.
Well, I can certainly relate to that. That's the spirit that all probably most of the GFDA advice was written in. So I'm responsible for all of the writing that you or anybody sees on Instagram. And first of all, thank you for the kind words that you said about your appreciation of our brand and our work. So many people at this point have reached out to us and said things that are, I mean, it's almost difficult to talk about, but more people have reached out to us and said, I was going to commit suicide, but I read something you wrote and now I'm not. That's come through literally more times than I can count. I mean, not more times than I can count, but I can't recall all of them. It's happened so many times at this point over the years. And so there's also some responsibility, and that's that's why I'm so driven to create meaning in our work, because it would be so easy for us. It would be way more profitable for us to follow all of the trends for money, like revenue cycles that come from just making thoughtless crap and promoting it in a certain way. You make a lot more money doing that than what we do, which is laboring over how we are communicating with this community that's formed around our brand. And for better or worse, maybe it's just like this. My entire life, like people have said, "Oh, you'd be a great dad." So I got like dad vibes, right? And that's what led me to be a teacher. I was a dedicated teacher, loved every second of it, cared about every single student, even the ones that hated me, which there were a bunch of those. And so I'm kind of got a natural bent towards feeling responsibility for other people, feeling responsibility for my society, feeling responsibility for my community, my friends, anybody that I've got influence on. And of course, I screw up constantly. I do things I regret constantly, but I try really hard to find something inside of me that I struggle with, to process it, to synthesize it through my work, and to make it as simple as I can, to boil it down as much as I can, so as many other people will get something out of it. I try to get down to that meaning, that core meaning, and give it out to other people. I'll say this: it's humbling that somebody who's as driven as yourself can find value and meaning in that, and I'm really glad to hear you say that. I'm glad that it has been some use to you.
More use than you know. Um, I think the great thing about what you do and what you write is, a lot of motivation can be very negative. You think David Goggins and the stuff that he says to people, even though he's encouraging some people, the way you put it is you're not living to your potential. You could do better in this area. You could do better in this area. So it's not just, putting people down, telling them what to do wrong, telling them what to do or how to live. It's encouraging, but in a way that everybody can relate to it. Because for one, you got the swear words in it. Everybody loves that because it just makes people relax a little bit. At least for me, the second you say a cuss word, if we're in an interview or something and you swear, gloves are off. Like I can finally relax and be like, okay, this is my kind of person too. But it's not just the hard driven, you have to go out there, you have to do this. It's just gentle encouragement that none of us are doing as good as we should. We can always do better. Here's a way you can do that.
Anytime you are going to be brutally honest with somebody, which for some of us is a thing they probably wish they could turn off. Sometimes I unfortunately struggle with that. But anytime you're going to be brutally honest with somebody, you can't just be honest about what's wrong. You've got to be honest about what's right also. I I mean, a lot of people from my past would talk to me, would if you went and asked them candidly, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, he's a huge asshole. Like I can't stand him." And I earned it. I'm certain that I earned it, but I think that what a lot of people would also say is that I looked for the best in them and I pointed out the best in them and I pointed out what their strengths were. And so I think that is a necessity for anybody. There are a lot of people on social media in the motivation game these days. I mean, I don't want to be discouraging to anybody, but I'm just here to tell you if you've got like um 300 and something followers and you've decided to make it your career that you're going to be a mindset coach on Instagram, you got a lot of competition because I am watching you guys by the dozens. The reason I mention it is this is because I see so many of those people trying to coast on a shallow message. I see so many of them working up these responses to our posts or I take a peek at their content and they're copying trends in the motivation, inspiration, edutainment environment, and you can't find you can't find big success in that, but you can't find any real satisfaction in it because you're not really touching anybody. And you gotta, if you're going to touch somebody, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. I mean, think about what the most powerful conversations you've had in your life are. They aren't the ones where you were talking to somebody in a business setting and, chit-chatting about bullshit. It was the conversations where you were real with somebody. It were your conversations with a family member, their conversations with a close friend, or their conversations with some random person who was like, "Hey, you're a dick," and you think about it and take it into you internalize it. It's got to be it's got to be soft and hard at the same time. It's got to be a penetrating truth, but it's got to be delivered in a way that helps you understand that that truth's not devastating, that it's productive. And even if you're broken down a little bit, the end message has got to be it's part of the purpose of your life to build back up. And you're going to be broken down over and over again. And you always build back up. And as you gain life experience, you build back up faster, you build back up taller, you build back up in a new direction. And you got to own that. And if you hide from it, you're robbing yourself of a way better future down the road.
You said something though that I want to touch on is you said it's not devastating, it's productive. And that was spot on. All of my most meaningful conversations were when I was the most vulnerable, just ripped wide open, saying, here's what happened, but let me tell you how I build myself back up. Or if I'm not there yet, this is how I'm going to do it. So I just had to repeat that because that was perfect. And that's what I'm about. I will tell you the worst times of my life. But like you said in the messages, when we were first talking about this podcast, is there's always a prize at the end. And for every single one of my stories that suck, there's always a prize at the end. And there's much more good in my life than there ever was bad. but I feel that there's some connection in um, people knowing that other people have hurt too, but they've also, climbed their way out of it. So we got to just keep climbing.
There's a very well-known quote from Rumi that says, "Seek treasure amid ruins." And that's something that's Rumi's quoted by a lot of people, particularly on the internet. But man, that dude was smart. I wish I could sit down and talk with Rumi. Um, that quote, "Seek treasure amid ruins," that has there the times in my life when I've been most devastated, when I've been most hurt, most alone, most hopeless. That quote pops into my head and it pisses me off. It makes me feel so much worse sometimes because you don't want to hear that. You don't want because all you see is the ruins.
Mhm.
What the meaning of that message is seek. Seek is the important word in that message. What he's not saying is every time you're in ruins, you're going to stumble on a treasure. He's not saying the reason things have become ruined is so that treasure will sprout out of it. That's not what he's saying. He's
Mhm.
telling you you have to look for it. You have to find the thing in the horrible experience that you can grow from, that you can use, that you can share with other people, that will somehow you've got to find the balm for your soul in the worst events of your life because those events are going to keep coming. You're going to have those events over and over again, no matter what you do, no matter how good you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter how talented you are. I really believe that. I truly believe that's true of the most wealthy and powerful people on earth, that they're subject to these aspects of the human experience. And if you don't seek the value of those experiences, you're going to grow embittered and resentful, and it's going to take you away from your humanity. It's going to make you vindictive towards other people. It's going to make you feel insecure around other people. And you can't, that's hell. That's losing everything. You got to fight against it. And that's what you do. You look in those hard experiences and you find something, and it's different for everybody and it's different from every experience, but you got to look for it. You have to.
Very well said.
Thank you. What do you consider to be your greatest success in life?
This one's really easy for me, but it's difficult to talk about because it hasn't been easy. Um, it's being a good mother. And I there was a time in my life where I allowed somebody into my life that that allowed me to become not a good mother. I didn't protect my daughters um, emotionally. Um, but like you said, finding the treasure amongst the ruins is that had I not gone through that and had even one of my daughters ask me, this was a few years ago when she was a little bit younger and didn't know how to express her words, asked me if kids can divorce their parents.
Ooh,
That sentence changed my entire situation. I got myself out of I was in a very emotionally abusive relationship for quite a few years, almost 2 years after I had separated from my ex-husband. And I really was just trying to stay afloat. I felt like I was drowning all the time, and I couldn't dedicate myself as a mother to my daughters because I was too busy catering to a person that was pretty terrible. So, anyways, after almost 2 years of this, um, my oldest daughter asked me, just sitting on her bed one night, that question. And about less than 2 months later, got myself out of that. It took us 2 years from that day for us to have a good relationship again. And now my oldest daughter lives with me permanently. I have shared custody of both of my daughters with their dad. The oldest that asked me that question actually lives with me permanently. The second she moved in, we got her a job. I got her in therapy because she and I had some stuff that we had to work out because as a mother, I did not protect my daughters. I will never forget that. I think about it every day for the rest of my life. But now, what I am most proud of and where I think I am the most successful is I'm finally the mother that I wanted to be since the very first day I found out I was pregnant.
Well, I'd say that's an accomplishment worthy of a lifetime of effort. Truly it is. Is that the most difficult thing you've ever done in your life?
100% because I was very ashamed of the situation that I was in that I didn't reach out for help. Only a few very close friends knew and eventually it got to the point where I was starting to fantasize about taking my own life. I wouldn't do it because I could not do that to my daughters, but just the thought of having that pressure off and living in that constant fear and hell was such a relief that I just wanted to think about it one day ending. And when I first caught myself doing that, I actually reached out to one of my officers in the fire service at that time and said, "Hey, I just scared the shit out of myself. Here's what just happened. I need you to hold me accountable. When I come to work, I don't want to be alone because that's when my thoughts would, overwhelm me." But I was very ashamed. And I was so ashamed to the point that I was even hiding it from my children, from my daughters. And I was just a horrible mother to them. I didn't stick up for myself, I didn't stick up for them. There was a lot of tension in that household. Um, I have forgiven myself for that because I know at the time I was incredibly weak emotionally, eventually physically. So I've forgiven myself for that, but I'll never forget. And I do carry the shame of that constantly. Um, but like I said, the treasure at the end of that is I will never put anybody ahead of my children ever again. I don't care who they are. And they will always know that I'm somebody that they can come to for protection now and unconditional love.
The reason we cringe, the reason we find it so difficult to watch even theatrical portrayals of people embarrassing themselves is because supposedly shame is the most relatable of all human emotions. We are most readily and most instinctively able to recognize shame in other people and feel it and shy away from it. And it makes sense if you think about how we probably evolved to form communal bonds and that sort of thing. But we'll get into that because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But um, it is shame is one of the most powerful forces that I felt inside of myself, and I suspect that it is for a lot of people. If you do something you're ashamed about, it stays with you your entire life, no matter how far you come past it, no matter how you have reconciled the situation, even if you worked so hard for years and you've totally erased all physical consequences of what that act is, it's still there inside of you. It's truly, shame is truly a wound to the human soul. And so my words are meaningless in response to that, but I will say to you, you have done so much good in the lives of your kids. I just know it without even, I mean, I don't have to, like, give them an aptitude test or anything. Like, I can tell from your sincerity and the dedication that you have put into helping your kids be people, be whole worthwhile, responsible people who are going to contribute to their society and be proud of themselves and who will look at themselves honestly. That is you've planted seeds that are going to blossom and fruit over and over again for decades into the lives of their children, should they choose to have them, into the lives of all the people that are probably going to come. Said your daughter's so wise for her young age. Imagine how many people are going to come to her in her life and seek advice from her. How many people are going to instinctively know she has that power of wisdom inside of her and are going to bring their problems to her, or that she may even be sensitive enough to see and reach out to help people. That seed is going to fruit over and over and over again. And that's going to that's going to have so much bigger of an impact on the world than the mistakes that you made that caused you to feel ashamed. As a citizen of human society, I thank you for that effort because it does have some impact on my life in some small way. Mandy, it's been a great conversation. I'm very, very touched to hear your story. I think that your daughters are very proud of you and they're going to be for the rest of their lives, and they're going to appreciate you so much. I appreciate you. And I'm just really grateful to you for talking to me about your life.
Thank you so much. You covered a lot of topics that I've never covered having been in a podcast before, and it was refreshing to talk about something different, something meaningful. So thanks.
Well, that is success. Thank you for the external validation on my success today.
You're so welcome.
So, everybody, thank you for listening to our talk today, and we'll talk to you next time.